You've felt it, haven't you? That creeping sense of dread before a confrontation. The racing thoughts when things don't go as planned. The way your chest tightens when you imagine the worst. You're not weak. You're human. But in this world, being human means being under siege. Anxiety, stress, fear, they're constant. And most people, they break. But not everyone. There was a man who stood trial in front of a hostile crowd, sentenced to death for speaking truth, and walked calmly into the poison chamber. No tears, no rage, just peace. Socrates. He didn't retreat. He didn't beg. He didn't lose himself in anger or fear, because his mind was something most people never build. A fortress. And the strange thing is, he wasn't a warrior. He didn't escape pain. He just saw through it. This is not about pretending everything's fine. This is about learning how to face the worst and stay clear, focused, unshaken. If you want to know how to be mentally unbreakable like Socrates, stay with me. Chapter 1. Let's be honest. Most people today are fragile, not because they were born that way, but because they were trained to be. Trained by a world that feeds fear, rewards emotional reactivity, and punishes stillness. We live in a psychological war zone. Every day, we're hit with uncertainty about the future, pressure to perform, and the subtle violence of comparison. Social media turns insecurity into entertainment. The news sells fear like it's candy. Our relationships are rushed, shallow, and often transactional. And deep down, many of us feel like we're one crisis away from falling apart. So we cope, we numb, we spiral, and we start to believe that's just life. But ancient philosophers saw things differently. They had a word for what breaks us. Passions. Not romantic passion, not creativity, but emotional storms, fear, anger, jealousy, despair. And they believe these storms don't come from the world. They come from how we see the world. Take Socrates. He wasn't some emotionless robot. He just refused to believe that external events had the power to define him. When he was insulted, he didn't lash out. When he was put on trial, he didn't beg. When he was sentenced to death, he didn't panic. Why? Because he knew something most of us forget. Your inner world is yours, and no one can touch it unless you let them. To the Stoics who came after him, Socrates was the blueprint. Epictetus, once a slave, later a great teacher, saw passions as signs that the mind had lost its grip on truth. When you're ruled by emotion, it means your values are out of alignment. You're chasing things you can't control and fearing things that can't truly harm you. But this isn't about suppressing your feelings. It's about going deeper. Socrates understood that fear comes from mistaking discomfort for danger. That anxiety is often just the mind clinging to illusions. That suffering, more often than not, is optional. It's a radical idea, but he lived it. And when you look at how he faced his final days, interrogated, mocked, sentenced to death, you don't see a man crumbling. You see a man free. Now ask yourself, what makes someone like that? The answer isn't luck. It's clarity. Socrates didn't fear death because he didn't pretend to know what it was. He didn't obsess over public opinion because he knew the crowd wasn't wise. He didn't cling to survival because he valued truth more than breath. And this gave him something rare, equanimity, a calm that can't be faked, a peace that doesn't break when the world does. In this storm we call modern life, that kind of mind is revolutionary. But how do we build it? That's where we're going next. Chapter 2. So how did Socrates become unbreakable? It wasn't magic. It wasn't denial. It was a way of seeing the world that stripped fear of its power. At the core of Socrates' mental strength was one principle: control what is yours, release what is not. He believed that external events, poverty, sickness, slander, even death, were not truly harmful. What could harm you was letting those events distort your soul, twist your judgment, or corrupt your integrity. This idea was passed down and refined by the Stoics. Epictetus, who admired Socrates deeply, taught that most human suffering comes from trying to control the uncontrollable. We stress over opinions, outcomes, and losses, things that were never ours to command. But your mind, your character, your response, that's yours. That's your domain. This is where Socrates drew his strength. He trained himself to care more about the health of his soul than the state of his reputation or the comfort of his body. When he was put on trial, he didn't see it as a tragedy. He saw it as a test of consistency. Would he betray his values to save himself? Or would he remain loyal to truth? Even if it cost him everything, he chose truth. And here's the most radical part. He did it without bitterness. He didn't lash out at his accusers. He didn't curse the system. He used his final breath to teach. That is the mind of a free man. Now compare that to how most of us react when criticized, rejected, or threatened. We collapse. We rage. We lose ourselves. Not because we're weak, but because we never learned what Socrates knew. Here's the key. Your emotions follow your judgments. If you believe being disliked is the worst thing that could happen, criticism will destroy you. If you believe that failure defines your worth, every setback will feel like death. But what if those beliefs are wrong? Socrates believed they were, and that's why he could remain calm while others panicked. He had examined his beliefs, burned away the false ones, and replaced them with something solid: virtue, integrity, clarity. He didn't need external safety because he had internal stability. And this is where equanimity begins. Not in escaping life's chaos, but in refusing to be owned by it. So, if you want that kind of mind, start where Socrates did. Examine your beliefs. Ask what's really in your control. Separate your inner world from the noise of the outer one. That's not easy, but it is possible. And if you're still here, you're already on the path. If this has given you something to think about, consider liking the video and subscribing. There's more where this came from. Chapter 3. Let's make this real. How do you build the kind of mind that doesn't shatter under pressure? How do you train yourself to face setbacks, criticism, even loss, with the same clarity Socrates showed at his trial? You start by shifting your focus inward. Most people live backwards. They try to fix the world to feel peace. They chase validation, control, and comfort, hoping that if they arrange everything just right, their anxiety will disappear. But Socrates flipped that. He didn't try to fix the world. He trained himself to respond to it wisely. That begins with his practice. Separate what you control from what you don't. You don't control the economy, other people's opinions, or how things turn out, but you do control how you interpret those things. And that's where your power is. So the next time you feel panic rise, ask, what am I believing right now? What am I trying to control that was never mine? Maybe you're afraid of being misunderstood, or failing, or being alone. Socrates would ask, is that fear based on truth or on illusion? Because the truth is, being misunderstood does not ruin your integrity. Failing does not erase your worth. And being alone does not make you weak. The only real danger is allowing fear to hijack your judgment. Socrates avoided that by living according to examined values. He didn't let mood or opinion decide who he was. He chose his principles, and then he lived by them every day. And this gave him something rare: mental freedom. Most people are trapped in emotional reflexes. They don't respond, they react. But Socrates trained his responses like a warrior sharpens a blade. He questioned his thoughts. He challenged his fears. He refused to let pain dictate meaning. That's not cold. That's courage. You can do the same. Start by slowing down. When someone disturbs you, don't run. Don't fight. Examine it. Ask what it's teaching you. Look for the judgment behind emotion. Then test it. Is it true? Or just something you were taught to believe? Over time, this practice builds a new kind of strength. Not the strength to dominate, but the strength to endure, to stay steady in chaos, to walk into discomfort without losing who you are. That's what Socratic resilience looks like. Not the absence of emotion, but the presence of wisdom. And it's something you can build, slowly, deliberately, like armor for the soul. If this perspective is helping you see yourself and the world more clearly, make sure to like the video and subscribe. There's a lot more to uncover. Most people think resilience means toughing it out, gritting your teeth, powering through. But Socrates showed us something deeper. He showed us that true resilience doesn't come from resistance. It comes from understanding. He didn't fear what might happen to him, because he had already examined what it meant to live well. He had already let go of the illusion that external things determine our worth. That's what made him unbreakable. Not because he was superhuman, but because he chose clarity over chaos, reason over reflex, integrity over safety. And you can too. It starts by asking better questions, by looking at your fear and saying, what am I really afraid of? By realizing that maybe the worst thing isn't pain or rejection or loss. Maybe the worst thing is betraying yourself to avoid them. Socrates died with peace because he lived with purpose. You may never face a courtroom or a death sentence, but you will face pressure. You will face moments when the world feels loud and your doubts feel louder. And in those moments, you'll need a mind that doesn't fold. So train it now. Choose what matters. Question what doesn't. And remember, your calm is not weakness. It is power. If this helped you see something differently, like the video and subscribe. Stay sharp, stay grounded, and I'll see you in the next one.